Hold your skein like a football. One of the ends will be tucked into either side. Put your skein off to the right. Have your working yarn in front of you. We're going to be knitting from left to right for our first row. We'll be making a slip knot for the first step, so go ahead and make a little arch with your yarn. Don't worry too much about the tail size. You're going to take your pincher fingers, pinch the top of the arch, and cross the yarn over itself to make a loop. For the sake of time, let's have the shorter side laying on top. Then you're going to take your pincher fingers, reach down into the loop, pinch that shorter side from underneath, and then you'll start to pull it up while simultaneously reaching your opposite hand down to the working yarn and pull at the same time, creating a loop. The loop should be about 2 to 3 inches. I personally like to take 3 fingers the tall way and slide them through, and that is how I measure each stitch. Personal preference, however. From there, we'll start our chain, otherwise known as our cast on. Take your pincher fingers, reach down through the loop, pinch the working yarn, pull the loop up, and then place it over to the right. And then repeat. You can go ahead and measure, make sure that it is the same measurement as your first stitch. Fingertips go into that second loop, pinch the working yarn from underneath, start to pull the yarn up, and then place it over to the right. When I do this part, I like to place my hands down on the previous stitch just to keep it intact to make sure the shape and size doesn't move. And then I'm only pulling from the working yarn instead of yanking it in the middle, which might make the previous loop a little bit smaller. Continue that. Reach down, pinch, pull up, set off to the right. Reach down, pinch, pull up, set off to the right. Go ahead and keep up with your measurement. If this is your first time, you're not really sure what your gauge is yet, you're not really comfortable with just winging it like you will be in the future. And then one other very important thing to note is that every single stitch, the working yarn should be coming out the bottom. So sometimes, here's what not to do. People will reach down, pinch the working yarn, and then they'll start to pull their working yarn up, but they'll flip it over so that the working yarn's coming out the top. No, don't do that, okay? You always want your working yarn coming out the bottom, and that will ensure that all of the stitches are going in the proper direction. Continue on for as many stitches as you're aiming for, or once you've reached your desired width. Once you've finished your first row, the very first step that you're going to do whenever you are starting a new row is pick up your skein, your ball of yarn, let some slack out, and move it down to the opposite side. So the first row we knitted from left to right, and this next row we'll be knitting from right to left. You can see this last loop in your first row, the yarn was coming out the bottom, as should have been with all your stitches. And then the working yarn is, we're gonna move it to the skein to the left and then the working yarn above your station. You can see that the last stitch, the working yarn is coming out the bottom, making a backward C shape and just kind of hugging around that last stitch. Okay, so here's my backward C shape. From here, you're going to start row 2. Take your pincher fingers, reach down through your loop. You're going to pinch the working yarn from underneath. Careful of this slack down here. You really want to make sure you're pulling all that slack through. If you start up here, then you're going to have sort of like a hole down here. So pull the working yarn through. Again, try to just pull through from the working yarn side. Pull the loop up and set it right above that last stitch in your last row. This is the first stitch in your second row. Then all these little arches that you counted in the beginning, if you were counting how many you did, you could count these arches and that will give you your number. Take your pincher fingers, reach down through each one of those. So I already have one through here. I'm going to reach down through the second one, pinch, pull a loop up. These loops can be slightly smaller than your first row if you'd like your blanket to be a little bit tighter, or you can keep them that same gauge if you want your blanket a little looser. So reach your fingertips, feel all of those arches, pull the working yarn up. Just make sure that your loops are consistent, fairly consistent in size with one another. Feel free to always have at least 2-3 feet of slack out from your skein. This will help you not pull so much. And then another thing to note is to try to just work with your first row as straight as possible. If you arch your yarn, if you arch your row and work in sort of an outward arched shape, the blanket will follow that shape. So you really want to just always straighten out your first row and try to just keep the shape of what a blanket would look like. Now you've completed your second row. Let out some slack. Bring your skein down to the right this time. And we will begin our third row. Now is where it gets a lot easier. Very similar to the last row, except now you get to reach through these beautiful loops that you have instead of those arches, okay? So now you can see last stitch in your second rows, the yarn's coming out the bottom left, making a backward C shape around your project. Pinch your fingers, go down through that loop, pinch the working yarn, pull a loop up, and set it right above. Now you're going to go through all of these loops and do the same thing. Try not to leave any gaps. So don't do that with the gap in between. No, that will make your blanket look very loose. Just picking up the working yarn exactly where it left off. Once you get to the end of any row, pick up your skein, move it down to the other side. And you're going to start your next row always directly above where you left off in the previous row. So I just did this loop, moved my skein to the other side. I'm going to reach back through that loop again, to build my next row directly on top of it. Now, when you're ready to cast off your blanket or chunky knit scarf, in this case here, you're going to make sure that you have enough slack to go down one width of your blanket and back a second time, and then back one more time. So I have a good amount here. I'm going to do one more row before I cast off. Okay, I'm ready to cast off. Measure again. Actually, I might be able to do one more row. Yeah, I think I could do another row. To cast off, start like any other row. The first two loops are going to be exactly the same as any other row. So take your pincher fingers, reach down through the first loop, pinch the working yarn, pull the loop up, do the same thing with the second. These loops can be slightly larger because they're going to be laying horizontal. Take your pincher fingers, reach down through the first stitch. Just like Pac-Man style, the first stitch is going to go over the second, it's going to eat the second, okay? Now you have one. Come back down to your row of stitches, make a second one. Again, outer eats the inner. Make a loop, outer eats the inner. Make a loop, outer It's the inner. Once you do your last one, you are going to take the tail. Oop, forgot that. Take the tail, put it through your last loop and pull to secure. And then you're just going to tie a nice tight knot onto whatever stitch you can find in the back. So just take the tail again, go under, and then through just like a normal knot. Make sure it's tight. And that completes your project.